Hi everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that is something you are interested in, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, before we get started, the only thing that you will need to do is download the color palette. I have it linked in the description below. It's totally free to download. Just open up the file that downloads and it'll automatically pop into Procreate so that you can use the same colors as you follow along with the video today. I will also post the canvas dimensions, color profile, and layers needed on the screen and in the description so that you can use those when setting up your canvas. So take a minute to get everything ready and then come back and we will get started. Okay, so this is the color palette that we'll be working with today. These are all of our building colors and then our bench and our trees and our sun. And our background is white, which is this first color on the last row. My background's already set to white automatically, but if you need to set yours, you can go to the layer menu, select this background color layer to open up this screen, and you can select the first color on the last row to set it to that bright white. But otherwise, we will just go ahead and get started on layer 1 here. The first thing that we will do is draw our main line. That's kind of like our horizon line that we will draw everything off of. So we will grab our first color on the second row of our color palette. We will be using the monoline brush for this under the calligraphy tab. I have the size at 100%. And I am just going to start roughly in the middle, a little ways from the left side of the screen, start drawing a straight line across, hold it down, touch your finger to the screen to make it perfectly horizontal, and end the line about the same distance from the right side of the screen as we did on the left, and then let it go. Click the arrow tool to select the line. Make sure this snapping is turned on in the bottom left corner. And we are just going to drag this line into the center where we see our center yellow line, the vertical line there. So it's perfectly in the center from left to right. And we want to find the other line, this yellow line, the horizontal one, that puts us perfectly in the center from top to bottom. But I want it to be just a little bit below that so that we have a little bit more room on the top side of our line. So I'm going to drag it down just a smidge, leaving it centered on that vertical yellow line there, so it is still centered from left to right. So I will put my line just right about here, and that is what we will start with. So next we will start drawing our buildings. So we will add a new layer on our layer menu and drag it below our line layer that we just made. We will grab our first building color, which will be this first one on the first row. So essentially, this is the main building color. This next color is the shadow color. The third color is the window color for the first set of buildings, and then the same thing for the next sets. So main building color, shadow, building, shadow, window for our 3 different layers of buildings that we're going to draw. So again, grab this first color on the first row, grab the selection tool, set it to a rectangle with color fill turned on, and this is what we're going to use to draw all of our buildings. So I'm just going to start on the left side here, right on my line. So I'm going to draw starting right underneath my line here so that the bottom of my building is hidden beneath it. And I am just going to draw up and to the left a little bit to create a nice little building here and then let it go to fill it in. Click the selection tool to turn it off and then click it again to turn it back on. Leave a space and then draw another building, maybe a little bit taller this time. Again, turn it off, turn it back on. Leave another space, and maybe this time we'll do kind of a skinnier one. Turn it off, turn it back on. Leave another space. I'm trying to get about 6 across, so I'm not sure if I'll get there, but we'll do a little trick here in a second. So this one I'm going to make even bigger. Okay, and I want 2 more, but I know I won't be able to fit them, so I'm going to click my arrow tool, make sure it's set to uniform, and just using this top right corner, I'm just going to downsize everything a little bit to the left so that everything gets smaller. It still stays below our gray line here in the middle, And this just gives me a little bit more room, but it keeps everything in perspective, so all the shapes that I created stay the same. But now I just have a little bit more room here to create some more buildings. And then we'll just do one last taller, skinnier one. And again, now I'm off the side still, so I'm just going to do this one more time. Select it with the arrow tool on uniform and downsize it just a little bit till I get a nice little space here on the right side of my gray line, like so. And that is my first set of buildings. And now I will add a new layer on the layer menu, and we will do our next set. So this will be the fourth color on the top row. And we will just grab our selection tool again, and we will draw some more buildings. Maybe one less this time, maybe we'll do 5. But I will just start again, and I'll cover some of these up as I go, which is totally fine. So maybe we'll do like a tall, skinny one here. Turn it off, turn it back on. Maybe a shorter, skinny one. Maybe another pretty tall one. Maybe a shorter, squatter one here. And maybe we'll do one last tall one on this side. Again, I'm a little too close to the edge on this side, so I'm just going to grab my arrow tool and downsize it just a teeny tiny bit to move it just off the edge there a little bit, but still leave a good amount of everything else showing. So that's 5. I think that looks pretty good. Nice little staggering and stuff. And then we'll add another new layer and do it one more time, this time with the 7th color on the top row. Selection tool again. And the main thing we want to do with this one is just fill in all the gaps. So I will just focus on that for the most part with this color. So this one I might even fill over both of these gaps. A nice squat one there. And one last really tall one over here. And that's only 4. Maybe I'll add one more on this left side to just kind of fill this out a little bit more. Something about like that, nice variation. So do as many or as few as you want of each color, and then we will move on to the next step. So we are going to now add our shadows and our windows to each of the buildings. So we will start with our backmost layer, the darkest blue one. Click on that layer on the layer menu and set it to alpha lock. That means we can only color over the shapes that we have already laid down. So now we can go in with this second color on the top row, grab that, grab our selection tool again with rectangle and color fill turned on, and we are going to create a shadow on the left side of each of the buildings. So we'll start outside of the building like this and then draw over, cover a sliver on the left and then let it go, and it'll fill just that part in with the darker color. So we'll do that for each of them. When the buildings are a little wider, I'll make the sliver a little bit wider. When they're skinnier, I'll make it a little skinnier. And we can even potentially not turn our selection off each time. We can leave it on like this and just keep drawing them. It's just hard if you mess up to undo it. You might have to undo the entire thing and start over. That's why I like to turn it off each time when we're drawing the original buildings. But then even this one, the left side is kind of covered up, but I might just fill in just a teeny tiny sliver to show that it's there, like so, and then turn that off. Okay, and now we are going to erase a little angle on each of our buildings on the side here to kind of make them look a little more three-dimensional. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool on the same backmost layer, open it up to select a brush. We do want to use the monoline brush again under the calligraphy tab for this. And I have that set at about 30%. And so what I'm going to do is erase a small angle right on top of where we created our shadow. So going up like this, erase a line, hold it down, and then touch your finger to the screen to find an angle. So this one's a little too deep. This one's about perfect. This one's a little too shallow. This one is halfway. So I'm going to go 2 up from halfway. So 1 up, 2 up. This is the angle that I'm going to use for every single one. So that's why we need to use our finger so that we can find the same angle each time that we erase it. And then I'm going to click Edit Shape at the top and move it around to line the eraser up right where our 2 colors meet to create the angle right there. If there's any other leftover stuff up here, you can erase that as well. And then we'll move on to the next one. So again, erase a line, hold your pen down, touch your finger to the screen, find that same angle, click Edit Shape and place it where you need to, and then erase anything that's left. And we will just keep doing that all the way across. And again, even though this one you can hardly see, I will still create a little angle there on that little bit of shadow that I drew right there. Okay, and that was our last one. So now we'll move on to the windows. Again, that will be on the same layer. So we are going to grab the 3rd color on the top row. That's our window color for this layer. And we're going to go back to our selection tool again. And essentially, we just want to draw windows on this front part. So where we created the darker color, that's kind of the side of the building. The lighter color is the front, so that is where we will draw our windows. So I am just going to go through and sporadically create little squares and rectangles of varying shapes and directions all across the front of each building, leaving a little bit of space at the bottom where the windows will stop, like so. I did all of those in one go, so then I'll turn the selection off and turn it back on for the next one, so that if I mess up, it doesn't affect all the ones that I drew before. And this one's mostly covered, but we'll just do the top that we can see. And this last one, again, a lot of it's covered up, but there's enough showing that I can make a few little just like kind of sides of the windows that you would maybe be able to see of varying lengths. So something about like that, just to give that same effect. And then we are just going to do that for each one now. So now let's go to our next building layer, click on it, set it to alpha lock. And again, we use the 4th color for the main building part, so use the 5th color for our shadows. Grab our selection tool with a rectangle and color fill turned on, and make all of our little shadows on our buildings here. Like so. And then we will go in with our eraser tool to make our angles. So again, finding that same angle that we used before so that they are all the same. And now time for the windows. So we will grab the 6th color on the top row and go back to our selection tool for this and do the same thing that we did before. And now we will move on to our last building layer. So this one here, find it, click on it, turn it to alpha lock. And again, we used this 7th color for our main building. So the 8th color we will use for our shadows using our selection tool again. Okay, and then our eraser. And then grabbing our 9th color on the top row, selection tool again, to go back and make our windows. Okay, so that is it for our buildings. So make any adjustments that you need to this part, and then we are going to go ahead and move on and make our bench and our trees and stuff. So the bench will be first. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer above all of our building layers, still below our initial line layer that we made. Grab the 2nd color on the 2nd row, grab our selection tool again with rectangle and color fill turned on, and we're just going to draw our bench somewhere in the middle here, but we're going to start off by just drawing a nice long horizontal rectangle like so to be the top of the back of our bench. Then we are going to go to our layer menu, make a duplicate of this rectangle by sliding left and hitting duplicate. Grab the arrow tool and move this next one down, keeping it in line and leaving just a small space there. We made a duplicate just so that we can have them be the exact same size. And then we'll go to our layer menu again, make another duplicate. This time grab the arrow tool and let's go ahead and move it down again, keeping it in line, leaving a bigger space like so. And then we are going to switch it to freeform, and we're going to make this rectangle skinnier from top to bottom. So same width, but just grab one of these bars and make it a lot skinnier, about like this. Okay, so that's the main parts of our bench. Obviously, we don't want it touching our horizon line. That looks kind of funny. We do need room for the legs and stuff. So let's go to our layer menu, select all 3 of our bench layers by sliding right on them. Click the arrow tool and then we can reposition it. up a little further so that we have room for our legs, and I might want mine to be a little bit longer, so with freeform turned on, I'm just going to slide one of the sides out a little bit, maybe about like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my layer menu, add a new layer below all of my bench layers so far. Grab the third color on the second row, selection tool again, and now we're going to make the vertical line that will be the back and our legs. So starting underneath our first top rectangle there, starting underneath that, and then drawing down through to our gray line here, a nice skinny vertical rectangle, and then let that go. We left a good amount of space on the left side here showing. So now we want to go to our layer menu, make a duplicate of this vertical rectangle, click the arrow tool and drag it over and leave about the same amount of space on the right side there. And then we are going to go to our layer menu and we are going to snap all 5 layers together to make one big bench layer like this. Slide to the left on this layer and hit duplicate. Select the bottom one. Click the wand icon. Click hue, saturation, brightness. And we are going to drop the brightness down just to 45%. You can't see it change because it's behind this first bench layer. But then we're going to click the arrow tool and move it down and to the left just a little teeny tiny bit so that we can see that darker layer stick out to kind of create a shadow and 3D effect there as well. So move it over just a teeny bit. You can use your fingers if you want to, even to tap so it just moves just the slightest amount. And then go to our layer menu and snap those 2 layers together so that they're both on the same layer, so we just have one big bench layer. And now we are going to position our bench directly in the center of the screen, so click the arrow tool and make sure that snapping is still turned on. And we are just going to find our vertical yellow line right there, and that is where our bench will go on our picture. Make any other adjustments that you would like to, and then we will move on to our tree. So we will go to our layer menu, add a new layer above our bench layer, grab the 4th color on the second row, and selection tool again. I'm going to zoom in on this left side here, and starting underneath my gray line, I'm just going to draw up to make a nice skinny vertical trunk for my tree, like so. Go to my layer menu, add a new layer above this one, grab the 5th color on the second row, selection tool again, but this time we are going to use ellipse. So switch it to that, and then we are going to draw what is the main, the leafy part of our tree. It's just going to be a nice big oval, a little bit more vertical than horizontal, but pretty round nonetheless, nothing like really skinny, unless you want yours to look that way, but I'm going to make mine kind of more rounded, like this. Let it go, and then click the arrow tool to select it and center it on our tree trunk here like this. Go to your layer menu and snap these 2 layers together now. Make a duplicate of the layer like we did with the bench. Select the bottom one, click the wand icon, hue, saturation, brightness, and again drag it down to 45. The brightness, you can't see it because it's behind the tree, but go ahead and click the arrow tool and drag it out just a little bit to the left so that we can see that shadow there too. And then again, go to our layer menu and snap those 2 together so that our tree is all on one layer there, like so. Okay, and then we are going to draw some bushes on each side of the tree here, in between the tree and the bench, and then in between the tree and the edge of our picture. But we don't want them to either hit the bench or go off the side of our line here. So if you don't have quite enough room, you might need to downsize your bench or your tree or both even. So I'm going to go to my layer menu and select the tree layer, slide right on the bench layer to select it as well. Click the arrow tool, set it to uniform, and drag this down just a little bit to create a little bit more room there. However, now my bench is not centered anymore, so I am going to go back to my layer menu, select just the bench, click the arrow tool, recenter it on my yellow line. Perfect. Then I'm going to go back and grab my tree, select it, and kind of move it over so there's a good amount of space on each side of it. So it's kind of right in the center of this left area, right about there. And now I'm ready to make my bushes. So I'm going to go to my layer menu, add a new layer above this one. Same green color, Grab our selection tool, still on ellipse, and our bush is just going to be 3 circular shapes all next to each other, a big one in the middle and 2 smaller ones on each side. So I'm going to start and just make the big one about like this, let that go. Starting inside on the right side here, make another one next to it, a little bit smaller. And then starting on the left side here, another one on that side, again a little smaller, like so. Mine kind of dropped down pretty far, so I am just going to fill in this bottom space as well so that it's all one bigger shape. Okay, then I'm going to click my arrow tool and I'm going to position it right here next to my tree. I might downsize it just a little bit as well. It got a little big on me, but I'm going to put it right here next to my tree, in between my tree and my bench, like so, making sure it's nestled nicely under my gray line. And then again, go to my layer menu, make a duplicate of this bush layer, the bottom one, click on it, wand icon, hue, saturation, brightness, drop the brightness to 45, click the arrow tool and drag it out just a little bit on the left side. Now again, back to my layer menu to snap these two together so they're all in the same layer, and then we are actually also going to make a duplicate of this completed bush now. Click the arrow tool and just move it to the other side of the tree. Again, nestle it nicely under our gray line. We'll leave about the same distance between the edge of the tree on each side, between our 2 bushes, like so. And again, we want to make sure that it's not going off the edge of our line here. If yours is, you might just need to do a little bit of resizing. But now that I have my tree and bushes placed where I would like them on this left side, I am going to go to my layer menu, snap all 3 of them together onto one layer, make a duplicate of that layer, and then click my arrow tool and drag it to the other side of the bench here and place it nicely over here. Again, kind of trying to create the same amount of space between this edge of the bench and this bush, and then this edge of the bench and this bush. Again, not going off the right side of my line on this side either. So place it where you would like it. To keep it even with our left side of trees, I can move it around, and when I see all 3 blue lines like this pop up, that means it's centered with my left tree layer. So from top to bottom, so this one's not higher up or lower, it's right in line with it. Again, make sure it's nestled nicely under your gray line and you don't see anything sticking out. So I will place it there, and then that completes that part. So the last thing that we need to add to our picture is our sun, and then we will make the reflection. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer, grab this yellow color, the second one on the bottom row, and I'm actually going to use my monoline brush for this again. So I have it set to 100%, that's fine. And then you just need to decide where you want your sun, whether you want it anywhere in the background here. Maybe I'll do mine on the left side here, kind of nestled in this little area in between all my skyscrapers. So I will just make a circular shape, hold it down, touch your finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle, resize it a little bit if necessary. I'll make mine about this big. Go ahead and fill it in. If you need to, you can click the arrow tool and set it to uniform, and you can resize it. You can move it around, try it in different spots, whatever you want to do. I will place mine here, and then I will go to my layer menu, make a duplicate of the sun layer, the bottom one again, select it, wand tool, hue, saturation, brightness down to 45, and again arrow tool and just kick it out a little bit on the bottom left, like so. Back to our layer menu, snap those 2 together so they're all on one layer. Okay, so that completes our main part of our picture now, so we're just going to make the reflection. So again, make any adjustments to your picture before we do this. But now we'll go to our layer menu, starting with our sun layer. So leave our line layer alone at the top, start with our sun layer, and then we'll select everything underneath it so that all of our layers are selected except for our line layer by sliding right on all of them. Click group to group all those layers together. On this main group part here now that says new group, slide to the left on that part and hit duplicate. So now we have a whole nother group of all these layers together. On this new group part again, click on this main new group part and click flatten. Now all of those duplicate layers are on one big layer. and it's underneath our top line layer. That one's still on top as it should be. And then with this layer selected here, we are going to click the arrow tool, click flip a vertical, drag it down, keeping it in line, and place it right underneath our gray line again, making sure that our sides line up. So my two skyscrapers line up here, and then with this selection, you can see it's surrounded by this dotted line, and our dotted line is underneath our big gray middle line. So that is exactly where we want it to be. We don't want it to be above it or below it. We don't want to see any of this white stuff. So again, line it up nicely, nestle it under our gray line like so. And now it should look like this. And it's totally okay if yours went off the edge here, depending on how tall you made your original drawing. That is totally fine. Mine didn't, but if yours did, that is okay. And then we'll go to our layer menu on this upside down reflection layer. Click the N on this layer to open up the menu and drag the opacity down to 30%. So now we have a nice lighter reflection. And now I want to take it even further and make it look kind of like it's fading out. So to do that, we are going to still be on this layer here, grab our eraser tool, click it again to open up the menu, and we are going to switch to the soft brush under the airbrushing category. We will have that set to 30%, and with our eraser, we are going to start at the bottom and just work in horizontal motions, very, very lightly working our way up towards the middle and getting lighter as we go towards the middle as well, just kind of barely picking my brush up and dragging it along. And then again, kind of pushing a little harder towards the edges and the bottom to really give a nice fading out effect, like so. So you can see my sun is pretty much completely gone, and then it gets a little darker as we get closer to the center, which is what we want, but it's still all together just very faded, nice little reflection there. So that being said, that was our last step. So that completes our drawing today. I hope you had fun. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more tutorials from me in the future. If you would like to share your drawing on Instagram, I would love to see it, so go ahead and post it and then tag me so that I can check it out. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching!